Hello YouTube and Blade Forums, my name is John. Today I'm here to try to reproduce a cut test I have seen on YouTube on a channel called Cedric and Ada. The gentleman on that channel cuts 3/8 inch sisal rope until the knife can no longer reliably slice printer paper. I've never done a cut test on rope before, nor have I posted a video on YouTube before, so this will be my first. So I have a CT450 here in the CPM S35VN steel. The serial number is 9704, just to give an idea of the batch number here. On the gentleman's test from Cedric and Ada's channel, his ZT0450 did not stand up for as long as he had expected it to. It made it to somewhere between 90 and 100 cuts. Not much better than VG10 performance. So here I have my ZT450. It's actually sharpened freehand on a 600 grit DMT stone, the red one, and then finished up on a Spyderco sharp maker at 20 degrees, and then 6 passes on a loaded strop. So this is going to be typical of an edge you can get probably without using a machine or some kind of expensive device at home. So as you can see with printer paper, this thing reliably slices printer paper. So it is razor sharp, it will shave hair. And so now I'm going to go and cut the sisal rope here. So this knife is cutting relatively easily right now. It's slicing through here pretty nicely. I didn't mention earlier, but this is a block of maple wood I picked up from the local hardware store. This is the first time I'm using it. I just went down today and picked it up along with this sisal rope here to try to do this cut test. So I haven't noticed any decrease in cutting performance yet. It's still cutting like it did on the first cut. This edge is close to 20 degrees, maybe plus or minus a couple degrees. It's hard to tell when you're freehanding. I don't have any tool that will measure the angle here. But on this knife, I have had it at 15 degrees approximately before, and I have suffered edge rolls with it, just cutting, just whittling a stick off of a tree, And so ever since then, I keep this knife along with most of my others at 20 degrees on each side, so 40 degrees inclusive. And I find that does better with these CPM powder metals. Still cutting nicely, a little more pressure than was required when I first started. Not much though. Let's test the paper just to see where it's at. Let's make sure I got it on the edge there that I've been using. Yeah, still very sharp. I don't know how this is going to compare with the gentleman's test on Cedric and Ada's channel, because he does use his convex edge, and this is a V grind edge. So these numbers that I get will not quite line up with his numbers, I'm sure. But the V-edge is what majority of knife manufacturers send to the dealers when they sell these knives. So it is a more typical edge than what people will typically get with the convex that Chris Reeves Sabenza sends, or that you'll get if you use a work sharp belt grinder sharpening method. The knife is pretty ergonomic. No hot spots developing. And this blade, it's actually a really nice shape for slicing. It kind of reminds me of my paring knife from Zwilling J.A. Henkel's that I have. Cuts about the same. Now let's try a paper test again here. Still very sharp. I have no idea how many cuts I'm at, so I will have to count this at the end of the video. It's getting a little bit more difficult to slice, but not very different from when I first started, quite frankly. Let's test it on some paper again. Still slicing. Don't really notice any difference slicing the paper, quite frankly. The only reason I'm having to take several cuts now is because my arm is getting tired. I'm not pushing down as hard as I was to begin with. Let's try some paper cutting again here. Oh, it's starting to lose its edge a little bit. You can still slice the paper cleanly though. The ZT is a nice knife. I don't carry it as much. I do have my Benchmade 940-1 and I like that quite a bit more. I'm not a fan of the big sharp point on here. It doesn't look too good when you pull it out in an office setting around people who aren't used to seeing knives all the time, except for kitchen knives. The 940 is on the long side, but it doesn't have that aggressive look. No one's made any comments about it. Plus I like the drop point of the reverse Tanto design on the 940-1. I think it's a more practical knife. Let's try another paper cut, see how we're doing. Still cuts very good, very clean. I don't know if this is going to wear out before this roll of rope ends here. This is 50 feet of sisal rope here, 3/8 of an inch. I know on that Cedric and Ada channel, the gentleman there, he did I think it was around 87 or 97 cuts with this guy, with this ZT knife. And with his Kaiser in the same steel, the CPM S35VN, it got, I think, more than double, somewhere around 180 to 200 cuts. And that's a significant difference. That would lead one to believe that ZT might be doing some bad heat treatment, trying to save some money perhaps. But you know, also it could have just been one bad batch, just never know. And so that's what prompted me to want to do this test today. Ever since I saw that ZT450 test on YouTube, it made me wonder if I had a soft version of the blade as well. Huh, looks like I sliced my leather glove a little bit. Better that than my finger. Seems like it's getting a little bit dull now. Let's try another cut test. Still cuts. I think I'm going to run out of rope here before this thing is done. Can't imagine what the 940-1 would be like with its S90 V steel. I've always appreciated the videos on YouTube from the guys who take their time to do these cut tests. This really does take quite a bit of energy to cut through all this rope, especially on these super steels that just keep going. Let's try to test on the paper again. Okay, sorry there, my camera just shut off automatically. It's a Canon EOS 60D. So this thing is still cutting paper reliably. It's definitely getting dull though. I'm probably getting close to the edge of this test here. It still has a very usable edge though. This is what I would consider a little dull. But I think the average knife user who is not someone who frequents a blade forums type website will probably consider this very sharp still. I should have used foam book paper. It would have been a quicker test, but my goal was to emulate the Cedric and Ada YouTube channel test. The way I test sharpness on my knives usually is I test it by slicing a paper towel. I cut one into a fourth, and I hold it in the left hand and just slice through it. If my knife can do that cleanly from heel to toe, then I consider it to be sharp. So paper test is a little less forgiving than the standard I usually hold my knives to for sharpness. The standard I hold my knives to for sharpness is not necessary though. Alright, let's try another cut test here. Just the rope wants to escape. Okay, still cuts, but it's almost all the way gone now. It's cutting, but as you can see, with quite a bit of resistance. Maybe 20 or 30 more cuts. Let's see what happens. Try it again. Let's see if this push cuts. Almost. Almost push cuts the paper. I was expecting to cut maybe 20 feet of this rope with this knife, but I'm probably up to 30-35 feet now. Looks like that has been cut so far. My cuts are ranging from about a ½ inch to 1.5 inches. Try another cut test. I hope you guys can see this. So when I try to push cut, it doesn't do so well, but when I do a little slicing action, it goes in. Yeah, it's still pretty sharp. Got about 10 feet of this sisal rope left here. It's getting a little noticeably harder to cut. Almost there, I think. Also almost to the end of the rope. If the camera stops again, I'll restart it right back up again so nothing goes missing. These older model EOS cameras, they shut off on video after a certain amount of time. It's definitely taking more pressure to cut now, noticeably more. Alright, this is kind of ripping the paper now. Still cutting a little bit. I'm going to do a few more cuts, it looks like. It's still holding on. You know, it looks like right when you cut it after you're done cutting the rope, it doesn't cut as well, but 2 or 3 seconds later, it cuts better again. So I think the blade heats up with all this friction here and expands the edge a little and it contracts again. You've heard of knives getting sharper when you don't use them. That's been around since, people have talked about that since at least the early 1900s that I know of in literature. Okay, it looks like we're about there. So it still cuts. But it's still cutting pretty decently, actually. Let's try a fresh piece of paper here. Okay, I'm going to call it right there. It still cuts a little bit, but not reliably. So however many cuts that was, I will go through the video and count it up, and I will have a result for you guys. Thank you. Hello YouTube. So I'm back here on this cut test with the 450 with the S35VN steel, serial number 9704. We got 438 cuts is what I counted by watching my video over again. And you know, the knife is cooled down. It was warm to the touch after the test, quite warm indeed. But as you can see, it's cooled off. It cuts a little bit better, but still it gets hung up a little bit. But So it's definitely done. And so 438, that's quite a bit different from the Cedric and Ada test. It could have to do with the fact that this is a V-edge and his were convex edges, possibly. Perhaps the knife itself has a harder steel. You know, they do have a range of heat treating tolerances, normally between 2 Rockwell hardness points. On top of that, obviously the rope could be different. This is that sisal rope, 3/8 of an inch, 9.5 millimeter, purchased from Home Depot, $9. Made in China. And the wood I'm cutting on is, as I said earlier, maple. Just bought it today, so it's a fresh piece. So the variables here compared to Cedric and Ada's test would be obviously the knife, the type of rope, the wood, and of course possibly the thickness of the printer paper. This is your standard office paper though, so pretty standard. So that's the result, 438 cuts. A lot better than I was expecting. I was expecting maybe 100 to 200. But I got quite a bit more than that, 438. I would hate to do a test on the S90V. That could take me an hour. But so far I think this is a good knife for cutting. It definitely holds its edge. So I wouldn't hesitate buying it if you like the knife. If you do like the knife, I wouldn't worry about the heat treat. It doesn't seem to be an issue, at least not on this one. Perhaps on some older models maybe, but from my experience with this 1ZT, it cut well, as you can see. So I will create a YouTube account and post this video, and you can make some comments. This is not scientific, okay, so I don't want to tell anyone that this is a scientific and completely repeatable test here. It's just an observation. It's anecdotal, but hopefully it can help people trying to make a decision, and hopefully this video helps. So thank you very much.